I would like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting of April 7th, 2025 to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Murray, and I am the Chair of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors, which are over there, and obey all instructions given, and if assistance is required, please see the Deputy Clerk. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Please ensure your cell phone is on silent or turned off. The Town of Lincoln Committee of the Whole meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Closed captioning is available on all of our videos by selecting the closed captioning button on the bottom right of the video. Item number 2 on our agenda is roll call. Members of committee are in attendance with regrets from Councillor Brunet and Mayor Easton. Councillor Reimer will be arriving later this evening. We have staff in attendance in person and remotely. Additionally, we have representatives from Aird and Burles and the Greater Hamilton Health Network in attendance. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, which is the confirmation of agenda. Do members have any amendments to the order of the agenda? All right, so then on to statutory public meetings. We have no statutory public meetings this evening. We also have no consent agenda items. So then we move on to number 7, which is Planning and Economic Development Committee agenda. We will now begin. Oh, again. We have one delegation for the Planning and Economic Development Committee agenda. Please note that delegations have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Once we have received the delegation, committee will transition directly into the report and motion. Prior to the delegation, the Director of Economic Development and Communications will provide introductory comments pertaining to the Physician Recruitment Update Report. Director Deanne, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to committee this evening. Just wanted to welcome Melissa McCallum to Lincoln tonight. Melissa is the Executive Director of the Greater Hamilton Health Network, our local Ontario health team, and Melissa is here to discuss the work they do in primary care as a foundation of their work. And so we did have a wonderful discussion a couple weeks ago with Melissa and her group talking about primary care and the work that they do. So very much welcome, Melissa, and please feel free to come up to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Deanne. Before we move to the delegation, I will ask that committee proceed with a majority vote to request a time extension until the delegation is complete. Are we going to go up?
I've opened that for voting.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Renchema that committee extend the delegation time regarding the Physician Recruitment Update Report until completed. Sorry, missed that one.
No, that is quite okay, Chair. And Councillor Regima, may I have your vote, please? You can verbally tell me if it's easier.
Yes.
In favor, thank you. That's great, and I'll close that, and that carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Our delegation for this evening is Melissa McCallum from the Greater Hamilton Health Network regarding item number 7.2.1, Physician Recruitment Update Report. Melissa, thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Thanks for the introduction, Paul. So I wanted to actually give a little bit of a primer of what's going on in primary care within the local and provincial context today. And I come to you from an Ontario health team. And I think what I'll start off with, just as a primer, is what is an Ontario health team and how did that actually come into play in terms of health system planning. So we had some provincial healthcare reform in 2019 where we saw the local health integration networks, which would have been in our area, Hamilton, Haldimand, Niagara, Brant, dissolve. And what was created at that time were smaller planning geographies called Ontario health teams. And they determined who was going to be part of your Ontario health team based on how people were accessing care, usually from a primary care lens. And then when primary care was referring, where did they refer to in terms of acute care? So the whole province is actually broken down into 58 Ontario health teams. So we really saw the transfer from 14 LHINs across the province in 2019 to 58 Ontario health teams that have been developing over 5 years. The Hamilton team was actually one of the first waves. So we were one of 24 teams in 2019 that actually started this work. The last team was actually only approved last year. So there's a number of phases to this work, and we just kind of got to full attribution for the province last year. And at the same time, Ontario Health as an organization was created. And that's really seeing the combination of big provincial agencies like Cancer Care Ontario, Trillium Gift of Life come under one organization called Ontario Health. So the Greater Hamilton Health Network is the name of the Ontario Health team that's responsible for Hamilton, Haldimand, and Niagara Northwest. And when I refer to Niagara Northwest, I'm specifically referring to Grimsby, Smithville, and Beamsville. That is who I'm responsible for as an Ontario Health team. After that, in terms of Niagara and Lincoln, that goes to the Ontario Health team responsible for Niagara. So we do see kind of two teams kind of straddle this population here in Lincoln that might receive care, towards Beamsville, towards Grimsby, or might receive care, towards the Niagara. We also see that patients in this area, we know that they're accessing care from a number of points. So they might choose at some points to go into West Lincoln, which is a hospital affiliate of Hamilton Health Sciences, or we see them going into the NHS system for Niagara. So we do a lot of planning and discussion together because for good patient care, we need to understand how patients are moving through both of our Ontario Health teams. So I just want to mention that it's a bit of a nuanced area because the town of Lincoln actually, encompasses two Ontario Health teams for planning. I know there's been some discussions about primary care as a foundation, through Paul's work and understanding, what is the state of affairs when it comes to primary care, because it's been an extremely hot topic politically. For those of us in healthcare, it's been a topic for a very long time about how we create primary care as a foundation for health system planning. So each Ontario Health team is responsible for essentially unifying the voice of primary care within their Ontario Health team catchment in what's called a primary care network. So we have a GHHN primary care network that is really the one place that we go for planning, care, access, looking at patient attachment, understanding, the enablers to increase, not only patient experience, but provider experience. So we see this kind of, consolidation of primary care planning under and with the Ontario Health teams. I don't think you're, not know about the several challenges around primary care right now. We know that attachment rates are increasing and low in some of the areas around the province. We know that the number of patients that are desiring a family physician is rising, and especially as people are moving, they are not accessing a new primary care provider in the community that they move to. And on top of that, we have primary care providers that actually don't have access to other team-based resources. So we see kind of an inequitable distribution of the types of family practitioner models that we have in the province. We have solo physicians that practice on their own, up to family health teams that actually have a wraparound team, and I'm talking about dietitians, mental health counselors, physio. So those patients are actually able to access, a team that kind of supports that primary care practice. There is a shortage of physicians, and that's why, this conversation has come here. We know that from an HHR lens, we need more physicians to settle in the whole entire province. We also know that business ownership is something that our new graduates are not as interested in. They want to work in models of care that have teams. They don't want to operate, small businesses and all that comes with that. And on top of all of that, we see the administrative burden of primary care increasing and increasing. So how do we actually look to understand enablers that reduce that so that physicians are spending more time patient-facing and not, in terms of paperwork or managing referrals? The best data, and I want to really caveat the data piece about unattachment because it's very nuanced. And when I talk about best data, it is the data that we work with, with ministry counterparts that shows between 60 and 70,000 patients within our GIN catchment do not have a family physician. It's nuanced because I think that not everyone understands what attachment means. There are different access points. There are people that do not care to be attached to a primary provider. We think of younger patients, patients at universities, they access care, through student health. People use walk-in clinics for care access. And then people, we find, also are moving and keeping their family physician where they previously were living. We have doctors in Grimsby that have patients in Sault Ste. Marie. That's because not only do they want to keep that relationship, but sometimes they actually can't find a new doctor in their new location. The data is also very strong and completely shows us that patients have better health outcomes and there's lower cost to the system when they have relationship-based and continuous access to primary care. That is not walk-in clinic access necessarily. That is someone that follows you through the trajectory of your life. From birth to death, that relationship is really important. Someone to keep an eye on all of the changes within your health status, not having that kind of drop-in nature is really important. And I think as a caveat to our work, we want to progress the models that honestly harness that relationship and that continuous care. And at the end of the day, most people are spending the majority of their care, health care-wise, in the community. It's not spent entirely in acute care or hospitals. So again, going back to kind of best practice, that relationship with the provider and their team is super important. So Ontario Primary Care Action has really kind of bubbled up to the surface over the last year. Last fall, Premier Ford mandated, a direction around primary care and actually brought on Dr. Jane Philpott to lead a primary care action team. And she's got an extremely, large mandate. Her mandate is actually, to attach everyone in Ontario that wants it to a team-based family care provider within the next 5 years. On January 27th, just before kind of that writ period, Minister Jones and Jane Philpott announced a very large funding package and kind of the startings of a plan to achieve this 5-year attachment rate. There was an announcement of $1.8 billion to connect everyone to primary care by 2029. In that announcement, we see the growth of 300 new and expanded primary care teams over that 5-year timeframe. There's also some targeted work that they want to see around clearing the Healthcare Connect waitlist by 2026. That is the provincial waitlist management tool where you can call in and register for a family provider. We know that people have been waiting on that list for a very long time, so they want to not only clear the list, but lower the target for even waiting on the list. In terms of this year, actually, it's, within the announcement on January 26th, there was specific mention of $235 million to be invested in this fiscal year to expand 80 additional primary care teams across the province. Along with the announcement was this discussion about expanding digital enablers for providers, things like AI Scribe that can do documentation. And a lot of, Dr. Philpott's work is stemmed out of a Kingston model, and she really kind of breaks it down to, when you move as a family with your children, you are offered a school. You are automatically given a school to be registered in. There is no question about that. That notion should really be developed in the primary care space. You should be geographically attached, should you want it, to a family physician. I want to note that in this investment, though, we are talking about, the majority of this money is talking about the team-based care model. This is not necessarily money that is going to fund new primary care physicians. We know that there is a massive HHR shortage around that. But what we are looking at is expanding those resources around a team so that patients can access different practitioners, an interdisciplinary team, to also help with a practice, in hopes that in some cases, that could honestly free up some roster space for physicians to take on more clients. So there's a lot of planning going on, and there has been for many years at our Ontario Health team about how we address primary care from a number of angles. There's short-term and long-term planning underway on a day-to-day basis to develop this vision of full attachment. In the short term, we are preparing for this $230 million announcement to come in the next little while. How are we going to expand and build primary care capacity within our OHT? Who's ready for that and where are the gaps? We are in the midst of developing a primary care atlas, and this will really kind of be the sole source of truth for primary care within our region. Pulling data from multiple points, understanding who's going to be retiring, understanding how people are settling into the community and where the most need is. Analyzing the areas of need is complex. There are areas that could be ready for engagement of planning. I think about expanding a current family health team. Could they bring on more resources and then bring on more patients? And then what needs to be actually developed net new? Where are areas within our OHT, and the whole province will do this, where are those kind of desert areas where we actually need to build net new primary care teams? There's been a lot of engagement and visiting around this area about what family physicians actually need and want to enable some of this work. And planning for team-based resources is extremely critical because this will look different by geography and populations. the team that surrounds some of our rural areas might look different than the team that surrounds, the urban core areas of Hamilton. So what are those resources that we can place in there that helps, people access the care that they need based on where they live, based on health conditions, and based on, other gaps within the area that they live in. I also just want to mention, just before I end, we were quite successful in receiving kind of the first round of money that was announced 2 years ago by the province for building teams. It was kind of this first kind of kick at the can in this current government about putting some money into primary care. And we actually at the GIN unified one proposal for our entire Ontario Health team, which saw the development of Beamsville, Smithville, Grimsby, all the Hamilton practitioners and the Haldsman practitioners come together to start to think about, what investment and, would it take to attach our population. So we have a very good foundation for that work. In 2023, we asked the government for $20 million to attach every single person in our OHT. We were only successful in getting $2.3 million, but it was a start. This area alone, if I include Haldimand, Beamsville, Smithville, received about $320,000 last year to expand some of the team, including nurse practitioners sharing between Beamsville and Smithville. So we see a really good alignment between the planning in this region. And because we've gone through that routine of planning as one, which I'll mention does not happen and has not happened before, we're able to kind of utilize what is kind of not enough resources for everyone, but what does it look like for us as a whole entire primary care community to plan for patient attachment? So very complex, but something that we are engaged with. We spoke to Mayor last week and understood, from your perspective as a town, what is the readiness? What is the understanding of primary care access here, and where are the gaps from that perspective? So I think I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Complex indeed. And on that note, are there any questions from committee to our delegation? Councillor Ranjima, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair Murray. Thank you for the presentation. My question is about so the kinds of things that physicians would want to know are there for them when they come to our community. One would be, I'm assuming, we know on the list is the ability to continue to grow professionally. So how do you feel about the availability of education and the ability to grow as a physician in this area? Is there enough? I know there's a new program at the Niagara Falls University. How do we feel about that? Is there enough, or does there need to be more besides the DeGroote School?
Yeah, I thank you for the question. I think that we completely need to support learners that come through these environments to stay here. And we will incentivize that by showing them that there's a supportive network that is going to help them with their practice. The great thing is that we are highly connected to the McMaster Family Practice Unit through our OHT. And, the Director of Family Medicine there sits on our primary care network. So the planning for students and understanding, what does, learning opportunities look like is part of the work as well. We think about, Dr. Matt, I'm sure many of you know from Smithville, talks about this a lot. He'll get learners in, but they want to stay. They want this model. They look at the family health team model where you have the team around you and you can come in and work and access those resources. We want them to get that experience and then stay and settle here. So I think that is a huge opportunity and something that we're for sure looking at.
Thank you for that. And so just a question of clarification, how do we feel that, is there enough opportunity to learn and grow in this general area, or is there a need for more?
I think I'd have to understand from the physician perspective who takes on learners in their practices. So I don't think I can fully answer the question about how many more they would be. I just know that it's top of mind to ensure that once we have learners, we're creating an environment that they want to stay in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Mikulik?
Thank you very much, through you to our presenter. Thank you for coming personally as well in your presentation. So I have a question, things have changed. According to your slide on January 27th, there was that announcement, and Jane Philpott says she's going to eliminate this wait list by 2026. Do we really need to incentivize doctors anymore? They're going to solve this problem by next year. So I'm just wondering if this is a new development, if we really, or municipalities in general, need to really incentivize doctors.
Thanks for the question. I think incentivization, and we've chatted about this many times within our network, is one of the strategies to get physicians settled. There are a number of different strategies to do that. Jane's work saying to clear the wait list by 2026 is going to take a huge lift. Even just accessing that data and understanding and refreshing that list. So, I think incentivization, and we see this across the province, that it has been successful, but there's a number of different strategies, I think, in terms of recruitment that we can use. And one thing that we use here is that we've upped our actual recruitment, coordinator. We've put more dollars into boots on the ground recruitment to attend conferences, to get out there and bring people back. So I think it is one of the strategies, and I think it has been successful in the province to incentivize.
Okay, thank you. Because I struggle with this because it's almost like an auction mentality amongst municipalities, because naturally doctors are attracted to the best deal. At least I would be if I was, young, poor, starting out. That's what I would be looking for. So I'm concerned about, this auction mentality when trying to recruit.
Yes, and I think, with us not having a very steady flow of physicians constantly settling, there could be complete competition from one area to the other. So that's one thing to totally keep an eye on as well.
Okay, thank you. And another question I have is, what are your thoughts, so we have a doctor shortage. Does the province or does employers believe that doctors are paid enough? I mean, a hockey player makes $5-6 million a year, and you don't even have to be good. Doctors here, I'm not sure what they make, maybe $250, something like that, after they pay all their bills. Is that really the problem that we're having here in Ontario that should be taken care of or addressed?
I think there's a number of payment models. There's different types of payment. There's many of them. Actually, it's really quite complex. I would have to defer that to each individual physician on whether or not they feel that. I know that we hear quite often that there's a very high administrative burden for primary care. And that is, taking care away from patients. It's taking more time that, they would rather spend with patients. So how do we kind of, move some funding in to enable some of that work? But I would defer the salaried and the payment question to individual physicians.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a tough question, but I'm not sure if people are asking that question at the higher levels. I don't know, because I don't attend those meetings. I'm only here at these ones, right? So, and then my last question, from your perspective is, you see a lot of grants that are, proposed, brought forward by municipalities and how they're structured and that sort of thing. And one of the concerns that I'll be asking later is when I look at grants and it's just a lump sum, here you go. For our grant that we're considering, it's $25,000. Here you go, $25,000, and it's paid up front. But if you don't stick around for the 5 years, you have to pay it back. But it just seems like, I don't know if the litigation outweighs the rewards. So you're probably walking away from that, difference. So with these sorts of grants, are they typically phased in, staggered, or are they just lump summed? How does the province do it? How do municipalities do it?
Yeah, I think so. We don't do it. So I don't think I can comment on the process for what municipalities do because we have not done incentives that way. I would defer to, we see different municipalities handle this in different ways, in different sums of money with different kind of contracts back to the community and the amount of time that you stay. This was a very real conversation even with Haldeman. So Haldeman is part of our OHT as well. And, at the end of the day, they gave money to us to increase the physician recruitment program. That was their decision. But we also see, places like Kingston give quite large, incentives, 100,000. So I think that the shortage is complex, but it requires a number of different strategies that have been working especially in our rural areas, to attract people there. So yeah, I can't comment on what is the best way. I think each municipality is trying to, attack the problem from a number of different angles.
Okay, thank you. Those are 3 questions for now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Michalek. Councillor Russell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the presenter, just a few questions. The first, again, in the presentation, there's reference to, again, $235 million in 2025-2026 to establish and expand the 80 additional primary care teams. How much of that it goes to actually recruit doctors, and not to, actually goes to the physicians themselves that are recruited?
Sorry, just for quick, to the recruiters that do the work on bringing physicians?
No, the actual physicians themselves. Is there some sort of a direct incent that you have, or is it just creating positions for recruiters, but not to pay the actual doctors themselves that come in?
None of that money will go to physicians. That money is dedicated to expanding the teams that kind of surround physicians. So we haven't heard the breakdown. We're expecting at any time now to understand, what is going to be, what are the kind of, what are we playing in, what is the fence around this money? We haven't heard that yet, but we get signals that, a lot of this, the dollars that they can kind of carve out from the ministry, physicians are paid differently through the ministry. This money will go to, providing the team around. So it's not going to be going to physicians, and it's not going to be going to physician recruiters. It's going to be to support interdisciplinary teams, and hopefully, I don't know for sure yet, maybe some capital to, build up primary care homes, to ensure that we can attach people to primary care.
Okay, thank you for that, and follow up, Madam Chair. So again, in the GHHN, I'm not sure if you can, not just an approximation if you can, what percentage of your budget goes to the bureaucracy that manages the system and the actual frontline support that actually deals with patients?
The GHHN budget, my budget is all for planning positions. So I have a staff of 10. My staff does include 2 physician recruiters. Now, that is not the common model for Ontario health teams in the province. We brought on physician recruiters 2 years ago because we wanted to align it to our primary care planning. So the funding that the GIN receives from the ministry and Ontario Health is for those planning resources. We then work with our community to develop unified proposals for the frontline care. So when I talk about, 2023, we received $2.3 million. That was a proposal coming out of our organization that then saw that $2.3 million go to the frontline, hiring nurse practitioners and the team that surrounds primary care. So we kind of act as the convener to understand not only the landscape around our catchment area, but then help unify the ask to the ministry so that they understand, quite clearly what will it take, from a frontline perspective to, increase access and attachment. I hope that makes sense.
It does. I get concerned when there's new levels of bureaucracy being created and not being able to see how the money, and again, there's a lot of money being funneled that's from the taxpayer, directly into what we see as an issue and as an ask from our residents to us to try to facilitate recruitment through our own budget, which again is very limited as it is. So trying to see, okay, so where is the money being spent up top while we're trying to scrounge for pennies on the bottom to try to fix a problem that I don't know if it should be our problem to fix when all this other action is happening at another level. So just my 2 cents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. There being no one else in the queue and no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell that committee receive and file for information the delegation from Melissa McCallum regarding the physician recruitment update report. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That's now open. And I'll close that vote, and that carries unanimously. Thank you.
Excellent. Now we're on item 7.2, reports. We will now consider item 7.2.1, report EDC-08-25 regarding physician recruitment update report. The Director of Economic Development and Communications will provide introductory comments. Director Deanne, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to echo your comments and thank Melissa for the previous presentation and for taking all the hard questions. Thanks, Melissa. So good evening, members of committee. The purpose of tonight's report is to have committee authorize a local Town of Lincoln physician recruitment incentive to attract doctors to the community, thereby supporting our residents and increasing access to primary care physicians. Part of the report, a follow-up from our November 2024 discussion, presents to committee an administrative policy to help guide our incentive program. The incentive is open to new physicians to Lincoln, either as an addition to an existing practice or a standalone physician opening a new office. The terms of service to be eligible for the grant is 5 years. Anything less will require repayment of the grant or a portion thereof. It should be noted, as discussed in my previous report from November, data showcases that the vast majority of physicians stay in the community post the 5-year commitment, as the practice is up and running with a full roster of patients. It's also important to note that the agreement is between the municipality and the doctor, so not the municipality and the medical clinic, for example. Lastly, should council approve of tonight's policy in the incentive program, the start date will be May 1st, 2025, allowing us to work with our local clinics in the region on attracting physicians to Lincoln. It's also important to note that there is no new budget asked this evening. This amount was approved in the 2025 budget, coming from, as members will recall, the Benchlands Destination Development Fund. So shifting that $25,000 from that program to this new program. I want to also thank and welcome Jill Croteau from the Niagara region here this evening to both show some support and also help answer any specific questions you may have around physician recruitment. So with that, Chair, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Timmers, can you please start us off?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Director Deanne. I went through the document today and was reading it, and I don't have any concerns around the agreement because I know that's all done legally. How do we determine, say we have an issue, we have many people lined up, how are we going to determine who's accepted into this agreement? Would there be an interview process? And you just walk me through that, what we would do, and hopefully that would be a good problem to have. But, you know, everyone wants to come to Lincoln, so.
Through you, Chair, definitely a good problem to have, but essentially we'd be working with our 2 local clinics to help attract physicians. And so I imagine some of the discussions will be with those clinics in terms of medical practitioners would be coming in. However, as I stated, if a new physician wants to set up a brand new practice, we'd obviously entertain that as well.
Okay, so there would be someone, sorry, through you, Chair, a panel that would interview and work together?
Not necessarily a panel,
Or-
but definitely working with myself and of course, our partners in the region as well.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just before we move on to further questions, I just had a note from our deputy clerk that we don't have our esteemed guest as a registered delegation. So at this time, I would like to please have a show of hands that we allow an unregistered delegation to assist with these questions. Excellent. Thank you so much. Could you please share your name, full name, so that she can add it to the record?
Yes, sorry, my name's Jill Croteau.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so now we are going to move on to Councillor Patriva. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murray, and a question to Mr. Deanne. Like Councillor Timmers, I don't have any issue with this. I think it's a brilliant thing that we're doing. And because everyone else is doing it, we need to come up with it. And I like how we shifted the money from the Benchlands group over to this, because it's a definite need. My only question, and I'm back to my stats days. So bottom of page 9, 5,548 individuals either go outside of Lincoln, like Miss McColman said with her, like you could have a doctor in Sault Ste. Marie, and you have that relationship, so you still want to engage in that, or do not have a doctor. Can we drill down more? We can't, right, to find out what that actual split is, because, okay, that's my only, is that an FOI thing, or is that, Jill, through you, like, that's just, it is what it is, because we know the roster's registered at our local physicians, and that minus our population gives us this number?
So before I turn over to Jill and through you, Chair, I just do want to reference, and I do apologize to committee, I did have a little bit of a typo in here in terms of enrolled patient count as of February 2025. It's actually 22,655, not the 25,000 identified there. So I do apologize about that. Jill?
So, thank you, and through you, the Chair. The information that I receive quarterly from the ministry is patient enrollment numbers. So that is capacity of the physicians in your community. So that would be the amount of patients that are enrolled to physicians who have the postal code within the Lincoln municipality. So essentially, that would be showing, there could be patients coming in from Grimsby, seeing physicians in Lincoln, but at a maximum, that would be the capacity of the doctors that are here. So they could be,
Okay, 'cause-
yeah.
yeah, because our family, for one, is an example of that, right? Like, we started out with Dr. McKenzie in Grimsby, and it's just transitioned, so we live here, our doctor's in Grimsby. And another question, a follow-up, and I'm gonna kind of jump on Councillor Mikulek's question, because we had this come up at our roundtable when we met with the local clinics, and they talked about physicians and pay, and they're capped at $249,000, right? And they were, having to see a certain amount of patients. And that whole model, like back to a Dr. McKenzie, who used to make house calls, who would come and you would be able to see that family doctor no matter what. But unfortunately now it's changed, right? You're better off, and if you look at the Sunshine List, you're better off being an anesthetist, right? Because there is no cap on earnings.
So it depends on the enrollment model that the physician is under. They could be fee-for-service, or they could be under a family health organization. The family health organization would cap their enrollment to 2,400 patients.
Okay.
They don't cap their earnings. So there would be, so they would have a capitated amount, and then they would have a fee-for-service amount, a smaller amount that they
Okay.
would receive outside of their capitated amount. So again, it is very complicated to
Yeah.
explain the whole payment model for a physician, but if they see any patients over 2,400, then their capitated amount significantly decreases.
So having said that, if I may, as a follow-up, should we be asking for that model to be changed, right? If it's right, it's not working, and a physician shouldn't be penalized for going over and above and seeing more patients. They should be rewarded, in my book, right? It's much like, what's the word? I want to say fee-for-service, but it's not that. But it's rewarding productivity, right? If you're able to do it and serve the masses, why penalize them? I think that's wrong.
So I think there's probably a lot that goes into it in terms of
Okay.
access as well. So making sure that physicians are seeing their patients timely and not having them wait multiple weeks to get into a patient. So it is a balancing act for them as well. So
Okay.
I can
So-
see it from both sides.
Yeah, so, and just my third question, so, and maybe to Mr. Deanne, so is this something we might add to the docket when we go to AMO and say, we'd like to make a change, and, right, because we have a delegation, and ask to meet with Minister Jones on this and say, these are our concerns, this is what we're needing to do, and how do we fix the model, which might be broken? Not broken, but needs tweaks.
So short answer, yes, most
Yes,
definitely,
okay.
Counselor, but as per the previous presentation, there are some announcements and information that are waiting to come out of Dr. Philpott's work, so
Okay.
let's see.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patriva. Councillor Mikulek, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to, I would say, Jill, how are you tonight? Thank you for coming, and personally as well. Just thinking like, recently, like, there's been a lot of changes in the political landscape, a lot of talk. Global News had a report about hundreds of calls a month from doctors from all over wanting to come to Canada now. Have you been experiencing that? Has this been making your job easier? Is this news report accurate? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question through the chair. I wear multiple hats, so I can probably comment on that from a Niagara perspective, but also a provincial level perspective. Niagara, we've had a bit of interest from U.S. doctors wanting to come to Canada. I would say that typically our interest is still coming from the UK as a majority, not as many from the US, but primarily from the UK. From a provincial landscape, from what I understand, there is quite a bit of interest from the US right now, maybe not necessarily in primary care, but the specialties. So across the board, yes, it is a fair statement to say that there is an increased interest from the US.
Okay, that's good news, right? So, lots happened since we've been looking at this in 2023. So, another question I have for you is, when we talk about the need, to satisfy the number of residents that don't have a doctor, right? And doctors are businesses, they're corporations, they're dealing with customers. Like, is there a possibility, like, there's doctors that they just don't want to deal with some of these customers? Because if I know that with my doctor, if I don't go or I skip an appointment two times, I'm cut. I have to find a new doctor. If I go to walk-in clinics, this and that, and seems to be a lot of rules, being placed on patients nowadays that kind of make me afraid, that I got to behave myself. So how many people do you estimate are people that are just not good customers that doctors don't want to have on their roster?
That's a great question. I don't know if I can comment on that. I don't think I would know an exact number. I don't think it's common that physicians would turn down somebody that needs care unless it's for a valid reason.
Okay, just trying to understand the data that's projected and presented, to try to understand the real need. And I do know, and I do hear from residents that they have a hard time finding a doctor. And I'll be honest, my doctor, my last one was in St. Catharines, and the one I have now is in Niagara Falls. So it's just the way it is for me. And then with respect to the agreement itself, this is probably best to our director, Paul Diani. In the bylaw, it says, whereas number 2 includes a yearly funding of $25,000 from the program budget. From where? Like you said earlier that we were only approving $25,000 from the whatever fund you said.
From the levy?
From the no.
So this is through you, Chair. The $25,000 is in the base budget as part of the levy, and so pending council
redirected funds from
a previous program,
Yeah.
which was also in the levy on a yearly basis. So this would be yearly money, obviously pending council's approval for the 2026 budget and beyond.
So rather than tourism, it would be, rather than funding tourism, it'd be funding this recruitment.
Correct. So
it's
rather than-
not just for this year, but this bylaw is for future years as well. We
So-
can expect to see this in future budgets also.
Yep, obviously, through you, Chair, pending council's approval, it would be in the yearly budget. Now, keep in mind that the bylaw, you're not approving a bylaw tonight, Councillor. This would be an example of a bylaw between the
Okay.
municipality and a doctor, should we be successful in recruiting a doctor.
Okay, so those details haven't been worked out.
This is just an example bylaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that. And then another question, my third one, right?
No, this will actually be number 4, so I'm going to ask
4.
you to pause,
All right.
and we're going to move on to Councillor Russell, and you can come back in the queue at that point. Councillor Russell, over to you, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quickly, I'm not sure if it would be to Director Diani or to Jill. Are most doctors government employees, like through the province?
Yes, they're all funded through the Ministry of Health, either billing OHIP or if they were part of a community health center model, which there are none in this region, but that salary would come from the ministry as well.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up. So would they, or should they then show up on Sunshine List?
They're technically a business, so they would run their revenues through a medical corporation, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm just
question.
looking to verify the income, because again, you said that there might be like dual streams of income through the model and then like the patient service model. So I was just trying to verify with my own doctor to see if he was on there, and I couldn't find him. So I was just kind of curious to see, okay, so how do we verify like the need and then potential costing down the road? But again, it may not be verifiable publicly. So,
Yeah, sorry.
you. That's okay.
Great question.
thank you.
Councillor Miklick, back to you, please.
Not a problem. Perfect. So, Section C of the agreement has not accepted other incentives of similar nature in the past. Is that from other municipalities? Is that even outside of Niagara? Could it be Stony Creek? Is it within the Hamilton area?
Sorry,
Because we're part of
I'll jump
Hamilton
in.
Health Sciences also, is that?
So Melissa has confirmed that there are no incentives that are being offered in the Hamilton region. I would say that this is more for the Niagara region and the municipalities that are offering incentive. I think the intent is for the doctors not to jump from community to community
Yeah.
after 5 years to keep
Yeah,
applying for
absolutely.
new
No,
incentive.
You don't want contract jumpers, no.
Yeah. So depending on what the language looks like within the report or within the bylaw, that would have to be outlined.
Yeah, I just-
I think there are some that it's provincial-wide. So if they have accepted an incentive from another community, then they would no longer be eligible for this one.
Okay, I just want to make clear that,
Yep.
that's the case. And then my last question is,
And if I could just dovetail on that, Councillor, I mean, Jill is correct. If you recall our conversation from November, it came up from committee that we didn't want to poach other doctors from the Niagara region. I think, Councillor Russell, you were the one that brought that up. So the language in here, make sure that we don't do that.
perfect, okay, and then, so, through you, with respect to ensuring that, these doctors, like, it basically says we verify it just by popping in their office. Like, is there a better way to make sure that doctors are actually fulfilling full-time responsibility? Like, it just seems like we're gonna knock on the door and make sure there's a pulse. Like, I don't know if that seems pretty, like, the contract seems pretty simple. Does that make sense to me, as far as ensuring value for service?
So through you, Chair, to the councillor, I mean, I think looking at some of the other agreements from other municipalities, the language was similar to what other municipalities are doing in terms of their agreement. Having said that, councillor, we're going to run these agreements and documentation through the municipality's legal, just to make sure that everything is copacetic and strong as possible. So again, these are just draft agreements. Should we be successful in bringing forward a physician, this agreement and the bylaw would be coming back to council for future consideration.
Okay, so just to clarify, it will be coming back for council to look at and verify and finalize.
Through you, Chair, the bylaw would be coming back to council
Okay.
because you'd have to vote on that. Yes,
Perfect.
correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing no further questions. I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer that committee receive and file for information report EDC-08-25 regarding the physician recruitment incentive program, and that committee approve the physician recruitment incentive program grant policy attached as Appendix E, and that committee directs staff to collaborate with the Niagara Region's physician recruitment and retention specialist to attract physicians to Lincoln, and that the mayor and the town clerk be authorized to execute all necessary agreements between the corporation of the town of Lincoln and participating physicians, and that committee directs staff to monitor the program's effectiveness in 2025 and report back with any recommended adjustments as part of the 2026 budget process. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open.
And while the vote is going on, I wanted to thank Jill. She has already left. If you could please pass on our thanks to her.
And I will close that vote, and that carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now consider item 7.2.2, Report PD-09-25, regarding the Town of Lincoln update regarding current site plan applications. The Director of Planning and Development will provide introductory comments. Director Bruder, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of committee, I wanted to bring forward this report, or staff did rather, just in light of the fact that when you consider development applications, many times they can often be cyclical. First, there's the preliminary design aspects, or the aspects that come before committee and council for consideration. Those types of applications you've been seeing a relatively high volume of over the past little while. But really, there's other things that happen after that when you really drill down into the detailed design aspects of these things. A lot of discussions that are a lot more highly technical in nature. Well, those conversations remain ongoing. And, I think for a while, like I said, we saw a lot of the land use permission type applications, those ones at the outset. And now, as you can see in the list that's provided in this report, there are a lot of active site plan applications that we're currently working on. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to provide a little bit of an update for council, a little bit of a synopsis of where some of these larger files are at, because you saw them go through the land use approvals process. You see on a lot of these items that they're nearly complete. You see a lot of that in that table, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're there. And oftentimes at that point in the site plan process, that's when resources are most utilized. We're finalizing design details. We're securing site securities, making sure those numbers make sense. We're finalizing agreements and moving forward with administrative items to make sure that those agreements are properly registered and in place. And moving forward after that, that enables the project to head into the building permit stage. There's a lot of files that you'll see, when you look back at the years prior. Some of them remain open, some of the larger ones. There's a lot of factors that play into those types of things. They can be factors related to market conditions. Some of those we've been experiencing now that might impact the short-term viability of a project or otherwise just influence the timing of when to bring that forward to fruition. Sometimes there's large gaps between submissions, could be resulting from that first implication, but could otherwise just be that the design team needs some time. Sometimes they review and tweak their designs on their own accord. And there can be some further back and forth required with staff, just in terms of items of compromise, working through design details, thinking about alternative solutions, and all those things. So you'll see kind of varying stages, varying years of when site plans were initiated, and some of them do remain open. Most of the time, that's why. There isn't really any mandated timeline in terms of how long a file can remain open. We typically work with applicants on these if there's a large period of inactivity. The province requires processing timelines. As you all know, we've been through a lot of these updates on provincial legislation pertaining to that. But oftentimes, there's definitely an understanding with developers and any other property owner working through a site plan process that, some of these things take time. So those timelines aren't necessarily always drilled down on. We have good working relationships with a lot of repeat applicants in the town, a lot of productive back and forth, and the Town of Lincoln staff has a reputation for being highly collaborative. So we maintain those efforts. But again, this is not so much to get into the design details of each one of those files that you see, because that would be a whole other conversation that could take a whole night in of itself. It's more just to give you an update on where some of these things are at and looking at the list of what town staff currently has before them from a site plan perspective. So those are my comments, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Bruder. I'll put that out to committee. Are there any questions? We'll start with Councillor Renchema. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Muri. Thanks for this report. I guess I'm just going to ask what kind of feedback you're getting from the development community that have these site plans in process and how they're, it's a tough question, but are you getting the feel that they're ready to move forward? Let's say out of, there's a lot. Let's say out of 50, if I was to ask you for a percentage, would you say, oh, maybe you're getting the feeling that 50% of these are ready to move forward with construction, or 10%, or you're hearing a lot of hesitancy? How's it looking from your perspective?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is a difficult question, but I'll try to answer it best I can. What I'm hearing generally, not necessarily a hesitancy in bringing it forward. I mean, I think it's all about timelines. I think everybody's waiting to see how obviously some of the recent developments on not only a national scale from a, cost of construction and interest rates go, but even on a more global scale, what's happening in the overall market, and how does that affect more local market conditions? It's more a lot of these applicants are wanting to make sure they're at a spot where, as soon as they see an uptick or a market niche or an opportunity that improves their sales, they want to be in a position to be able to react quickly. That's where everybody seems to be at, even most so with the higher density forms. The lower density forms, I would say a lot of them are looking to move forward sooner than later. I have seen some good progress in some files that have been sitting for a little bit, that they are getting more willing to go. But yeah, some of these higher density ones, they're still kind of waiting for shifts to happen.
Okay, thanks. Just through you, Madam Chair, I guess I was just wondering if you've aware of anybody that's chomping at the bit and ready to get going despite of, everything that we're hearing, the uncertainty. But, yeah, not a big change, I don't think, from what we would, if we would have asked you the same question 2 months ago. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Timmers, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, through you to Director Bruder. I think you've answered my question. That was one thing that was in my mind was, is there a timeline if, we see sometimes these developments that are just sitting there for a very long period of time, but you answered that already for me, so I think I'll just remove myself from the queue. Thank you.
And if I could, Madam Chair, on that, if I could make a couple extra comments. There are limitations on once there is site plan approval. Typically, it's 2 years for site plan approval in order for a building permit to be obtained and construction to commence. So I think that kind of plays into a little bit why some of these property owners are just waiting to cross the Ts and dot the final Is, because they know that once we go through all of that, then the time starts ticking a little bit. But again, they're getting to the point where they're ready to go, and we do have some that are being completely finalized. For example, there's the hotel on Ontario Street now, like we're moving forward with finalizing the site plan. It's done, ready to go, just figuring out securities and things like that. So that's moving forward. We've got a couple others. We've even seen some movement lately on the New Horizon site plan. Not necessarily meaning that they're going to go forward with construction this year, but just finalizing some of those final details and making sure we're getting to the point where we can literally move forward at a moment's notice, more or less. So those are some of the additional comments I would have.
Thank you very much, Director Bruder. Councillor Patriva, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murray, and through you. Matt, thank you very much for the report. Just a question, though. Wondering if you might be able to take a book or page out of the Public Works book and maybe plot these on a map to make them easy to see. Color code them, maybe use, green as construction complete and go that way just to make it a little more fulsome. Okay. And other question, too. So these are active site plans. And maybe as an addendum, a list of approved but non-active ones. Like I'm thinking of that winery we approved, 5 years ago at the corner of Bartlett and Lister. And things like that. And like I don't see that on there. Or the accommodations at Pearl Morissette. And just so we know where these kind of stand in the queue. Just want to get your thoughts on that, if that's something going forward. Because this is really good, but some of them you don't know off the top of your head, so you Google Earth them, and I think just plotting them, and color coding them might be, and that's my geography background, so I'm more visual than I am chart-wise, so want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, definitely good point with the maps. That's something we can easily do. We can circulate. No problem at all. Shouldn't take very long to finalize. On some of those others, yeah, that's a tricky one, because for some of those that you've approved, we might not even have necessarily gotten a site plan permit, submission, but we can try to give a little bit of a better idea of where we anticipate them. We don't necessarily know when. Yeah. It takes a lot of time and effort. You probably saw or noticed in the staff report, there's quite a list of potential studies, deliverables, reports, drawings that could come along with an application. Takes time to put them together. Takes resources too on their end. So it's hard to predict, but we can certainly flag some of those for you moving forward.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patriva. Councillor Russell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Director Bruder. I'm just wondering if you can shed some light into what the impact is when some of these properties go for sale and they're already either in the site plan approval or they've received approval from council, and they're going through that process, and then all of a sudden we see a sign go up that it's for sale. Can you just give some insight to what that transaction looks like or what that process is?
Yeah, certainly. And through you, Madam Chair, a lot of times the site plan process is if there is a new owner, and there's an active site plan on the file, there can be a transfer of that file to the new owner if both sides agree. But what comes along with that oftentimes is it depends on where you are in the site plan process, but a new owner could mean new concepts, new design. Frankly, sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating for staff because we get so far along the line, and then we have a property change hands. We've had some properties that are active site plans, they're listed in here, that have changed hands 3 times. And the site plan doesn't necessarily get finalized. It doesn't really make sense to close it off and start fresh because a lot of times the design does build off the previous one anyway. So as long as there's not a major discrepancy, we don't have to reinitiate it. But generally speaking, that's how it goes. The new owner takes over. The site plan maybe isn't complete. They say, okay, well, we want to move this around or maybe add X or remove Y, and staff evaluate that. And we amend the site plan accordingly, and we go through the process with them. But it always involves another circulation. It always involves more back and forth with all the required staff, agencies, what have you.
Okay. Thank you for that. And just to follow up, Madam Chair, could you give some insight? So when a property owner, again, is going through that process and they do put the property for sale, are they still actively going through the site plan approval process generally? Or is it kind of like they put it for sale and then they see if there's any takers and then they let that next owner potentially, again, keep on going through the process? Like, is that kind of like if we see that, is that we can visualize that as a pause on that property? Or is it, it's still being worked on and then maybe somebody else is going to buy it and actually build it?
Through you, Madam Chair, actually, it can go both ways. A lot of times what I see, if a property's for sale, is the property owner selling said property tries to get it to the point where it's pretty much, it's there. Like in terms of site plan approval, it's the design's approved in principle, more or less. Then I think what that does, and I'm presupposing a little bit, but that provides an opportunity for that, negotiation to happen between the potential buyer and the seller saying, well, hey, this property's ready to go. And the buyer can either just finalize, because remember, there's site securities and admin fees to be paid. All that would transfer over to the next one. Bless you. Or they might be working together, and maybe that new potential buyer says, well, hold on a minute. I've got plans X, Y, and Z that I want to engage town staff with, and sometimes there is a pause. So really, it could happen both ways, but I see it more the first way, more often than not, where they try to get it as far along as possible. So it's basically site plan ready, and the new owner, if they acquire, then it's ready to go. So a selling point, more or less.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Russell. Councillor Miklick, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through you to Matt. Reading your report, and you note some of the developments that you're working on, and some larger scale developments in process or under construction include the following. And you list off, like some significant projects there. And then underneath that, site plan applications anticipated to be submitted in 2025 include the following. And none of them are really I don't know if any of these projects are really shovels in the ground or anything like that. So what's the difference between the verbiage, or like when you say that site plan and applications anticipated to be submitted and some larger developments in progress or under construction? What's the difference between that?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I can see how that would be a little bit confusing. So the first group there, the larger scale developments in process or under construction, those are either we've actually received a site plan submission, we're working on it, or they've gone through the site plan process and just started construction. The latter group are the ones we haven't received any site plan submission yet at all. We're just anticipating them to be submitting one this year from what we've heard. Does that make sense?
It does in a way. It's just because I don't think any of these projects have dug a hole in either category. So that's why I was just trying to clarify. And just to follow up on that, when you have a site plan application that's approved, how far away are you from actually getting something happening? Is it days? Is it months? Is it?
Well, if you have a site plan, through you, Madam Chair, sorry. If you have a site plan application that's fully approved, I would take that to mean the design is done, you've got the site plan agreement signed, registered on title, drawings are stamped, and you're good to go. After that, that means it's fully approved, it goes, then there's a building permit process. They have to apply for a building permit, they have to go through that process, and then after that, they can initiate construction. And there's a lot of things that go on in between. There's pre-construction meetings and things that happen potentially sometimes. So I would say it's not a matter of days, but our building department's pretty quick at turning around building permits. So usually it's within, it's a month's thing. And when I say months, I mean just a
Okay.
couple of months.
No, just when I look at
Ideally.
all those projects, they all look like they should be in and about the same category. Another question I have through you, Chair, is what about developments approved in the past that, I think we have some on the books that have DC grants associated with them? Is that true? Do we have anything like that on the books that we carry budget-wise? Have we dropped those? I know that there was a couple that we approved that after 2 years, that is expired, no? Or how does that work?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd have to confirm with my colleagues in finance, but my understanding now from a DC perspective, I believe those are more or less off the books now. We do have some tax increment grants that remain ongoing for a number of years, but otherwise, from a development charge credit perspective, I believe now those have all, you're right, there was some previous commitments in years prior. We did have those CIP programs active, but I believe now they're all off the books. I can follow up with you after just to confirm that, but now it's more on the tax increment grants that remain, and those
Okay.
happen every year, yeah.
Okay, because that was some significant funding that was allowed back in the day, and after 2 years, I believe that's expired, right? So you have to reapply or reapply. And then my third question, I'm thinking it's my third. All right. So, when I read in the report, and we had a financial report a couple weeks ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, with respect to, the deficits that the department has been facing, due to a lack of construction and that sort of thing. But in your report, it says it continues to process a high volume of site plans. So when we're processing a high volume of site plans, is it more important to process the site plans or to get the things done? Like, is processing site plans not enough to sustain a building department?
Through you, Madam Chair, well, those are kind of two different things. The site plan is not a building permit, or it's not a building department file at all. That's strictly a planning thing that's under the Planning Act, and those application fees fall under the planning and development budget, or the planning-specific budget, right? Like, we collect those fees, site plan fees. It's not the same as building permit fees, which go into the reserve for the building department. Is it more important to have them complete? It's definitely a prerequisite. I mean, if a property requires a site plan, they can't get a building permit without approval. We don't really have control over a lot of the things that tend to delay, or perhaps, we'll say delay site plan approval. But it's just as important as any other component, because that's when a lot of the detailed design happens, right? So hopefully then, by the time you get to building permit, now you're focusing, there shouldn't be much on things like, grading and things like, a lot of that should have already been figured out at the site plan stage for the most part. Then it's more just the details on the buildings themselves. But yeah, in terms of, I know which report you're referring to about the building department, but that comes after site plan, right?
But that's still part of this overall process, though.
It's not part of the planning process. That's, now you're actually transitioning from the whole planning component. You're going through an exercise, again, all these applications under the Planning Act to building.
There's two separate budgets.
That's right.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. All right, thank you.
All right, our queue is now empty, so there being no further questions, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers. The committee receive and file for information report PD-09-25 regarding the Town of Lincoln update regarding current site plan applications relating to active site plan developments in the Town of Lincoln up to March 1, 2025. I will now ask our deputy clerk to please open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I will close that, and that carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now consider item number 7.2.3, Report PD-08-25 regarding site alteration bylaw enforcement and engagement. Our Manager of Development Engineering will provide introductory comments. Mr. Corvar, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple preliminary comments on the report, if you haven't had a chance to go through it yet. Just a lot of the information in there is provided just to give some insight on how we administer the applications for site alteration. One of the things I wanted to highlight is a lot of times when we see a lot of trucks rolling through town, we're concerned about the volume of fill that might be being brought in. However, the bylaw doesn't give any cap on the volume of fill, so it's not really a consideration when it comes to assessing and adjudicating the process. We're looking at things like when all this fill is dumped, is it going to have an impact on the neighbors to make sure that it doesn't, or environmental considerations being looked at, like protection of, MPCA regulated lands. We're looking at things like how are they going to make sure that the roads stay clean? Or can the roads handle the volume of trucks? Are we do pre-construction investigations to make sure that we know what the condition of the road is before and afterward? Those are the things that we need to think about when we're receiving those applications. And then when it comes to enforcement, if we have some instances where somebody does receive fill and they haven't received a permit, then myself and the MLE team will meet with the property owner and work with them to obtain a permit. We're always working with them to try to obtain a permit. That's the goal. We don't want to have to go to an enforcement level, so there's always a continuing conversation to make sure that we can work together to make sure we're not impacting anybody else, but that they can also accomplish whatever the goal is that they're trying to accomplish by bringing all that fill in. So those are my preliminary comments. I'm willing to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corvar. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Timmers, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Corvar. I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly. Oh, good. Okay, thank you. So when I was looking through this report today, I guess the question that was in my mind was, we see a lot of fill coming in and there's been a lot of major development and fill coming in rural areas, and people always pay attention and, I'll get a call about it. I guess my question for you is there a limit to how much fill someone can bring in? And I didn't see that in the report. And how do you determine, like I know you talked about it in the urban area, like 8 inches, leveling your lawn or whatnot. But if you're building and you're bringing in trucks and trucks and trucks, what's the limit? Is there a limit?
Thank you for the question, through you, Madam Chair. The bylaw is structured in a way that there is no limit. There are stipulations in regards to you can bring, there's kind of a minimum amount that you are allowed to bring in without getting a permit. But in terms of a maximum, there is no limit. So that's where those other considerations, like how does it change drainage, making sure it's not going to be a problem for the neighbors, all those are things that we have to consider when looking at a permit, but there is no limit set in the bylaw for how much you can bring into a property.
I guess, I've seen a few instances where water flow was affected, neighbors were affected. So I just wondering why there's not a limit. I feel like there should be a limit. So I guess that's why I was looking for it in the report, but is it being monitored? Is a person going beyond, like once they get approval, that's it, you just bring as much as you want? Are there checks along the way?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. We had a permit we dealt with a little while ago on Fly Road, and on a weekly basis, we received a report from the contractor to tell us how many loads were coming in. So we set conditions like how many truckloads you can bring in per day so that we're not getting completely inundated. And then we also knew the volume of fill and the volume of fill that's in a truck, and then we were able to calculate how many loads we could expect. So there's a trust there with the property owner to make sure that they're giving us the information that we're asking for, but that's how we would keep track of it, is them reporting to us the volume that they're dropping off every week.
Right, and that's exactly the one that I had in mind.
Before you
Okay.
carry on, I believe that Director Bruder has something he'd like to add to that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I figured that question would come up tonight in terms of, okay, like, there's no maximum set in the bylaw, why not, And I think the answer is, well, how would you determine what that maximum would be if it not for some of the considerations that Jeremy's talking about in terms of looking at, okay, the truck routes, do we have a designated truck route that handles truck traffic? Is it designed for that? If it is, well, then how can you say, there shouldn't be trucks going up and down, and what number is too much? If there's no impacts from a drainage perspective, if there's no impacts from a visual perspective in terms of, even visual perspectives are limited, but, I guess what I'm getting at is, if the amount of fill entering a site is determined to be clean and determined to not have an adverse impact on neighboring properties, then why should we limit necessarily what that quantity is? Because, again, we vetted through our process that there isn't an adverse impact. So other than just not liking how much fill is going to a property, it gets a little bit arbitrary to set a specific number in the bylaw. That's all I wanted to add, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Bruder. I appreciate those comments. I guess if, just through you, Chair, I guess if there was an issue with some of those criteria, like say it was affecting a neighbor or a creek or filling in water, whatever it might be, that would be identified and then they'd be cut off. That's it, like no more fill coming in.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Timmers. Councillor Miklick, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, it's an interesting that we're talking about this week after last week. So question I have is, who makes that determination? Is it yourself or is it a professional that makes, I don't know who makes that determination of, following up on Councillor Timmers' question, how much is too much? Like, who makes that determination?
When we receive an application for site alteration, then as it's stated in the bylaw, they're required to provide us with a control plan that's prepared by a professional, so an Ontario land surveyor or professional engineer. So there's that level of professional work being done to show how the grades are going to work, how it's all going to drain, to make sure it's being sent to an appropriate place. If we're in cases where they're close to a creek, then there's also permits from the Conservation Authority that are also required that they would need to submit to us to prove that they have those permits in order to also put that fill within those regulated areas.
Okay, so that's if it's in excess of the 8 inches or
That's-
6 or 8 inches.
That's
that you
correct,
mentioned.
yes.
Okay, perfect. And then just to follow up on that, can you apply for that permit twice let's say you did it once, let's say you did an alteration of 6 inches or 5 inches 1 year without a permit, and then you did it again 2 years later, another 5. And then 2 years later, another 5. Is that a possibility of happening as well?
Through you, Madam Chair, I guess in theory, somebody could try to do that. I would have to look specifically at the bylaw. I know that there are times when other bylaws for other instances where they say, if the combination of your final outcome is more than what the bylaw stipulates, then you would still be required to get a permit. So we would deal with those on a case-by-case basis. If we're hearing complaints from a property that they brought fill in and we say, well, it's under the limit, but then we hear the next spring they're bringing truckloads in, then that we would evaluate that at that time.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because there's neighbors, it's usually a neighbor that complains about the fill and the water ending up in their yard, and if nobody's really keeping an eye on that, or nobody's vouching, then it could be a problem down the road. So, okay, yeah, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miklick. There being no further questions, I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariba that committee receive and file for information Report PD-08-25 regarding site alteration bylaw enforcement and engagement. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open. And I will close that vote, and that carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Devan. We will now consider item 7.2.4, Report EDC-07-25 regarding 2024 Municipal Accommodations Tax, MAT, Program Performance Update. Our Tourism Development Officer will provide opening remarks. Ms. Basilewski, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, fellow committee members, town staff. It's exciting to be in front of you again this evening to present some performance impacts from a recommendation report we brought before you in December of 2023 that has some glowing positive accolades to have to share with you this evening. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to allow me to share an update on where we're at with our municipal accommodations program, now entering its second year. I'm pleased to say that the program is off to more than a strong start. In its first year, the town collected over $120,900 in gross MAT revenue. This still while aligning with our forecast for about $100,000 to about $130,000, which means we're trending not only on forecast, but we're actually overperforming. This positive performance reinforces the role of this new and powerful tool that we have. This visitor-funded tool helps support tourism in Lincoln without increasing the financial burden on our residents. 80% of the year's net one revenues was over $90,000 and has already been allocated to help support the newly formed St. Catharines Lincoln Destination Partnership, a new destination marketing organization, I am happy to say, that is now formally incorporated. We received our governance papers and our ONSA accreditation as of January 13th of 2025. With this in mind, the remaining 20%, which is approximately $24,000, has been retained by the town to help offset the approved DMO levy impact, an impact that we are very supportive that council unanimously helped support in 2023 as well, as we looked at bringing this joint revenue and this joint marketing organization to the table. This retained portion of MAT revenues from the town has been used to not only help offset that DMO levy impact that was approved, but it's also helped increase capacity and efficiencies within our team by being able to invest in MAT-related tools such as our AirDNA platform and ongoing support of tourism development initiatives like our placemaking, beautification, and additional visitor services that we have been able to actually enhance as a result of this revenue. Operationally, the town has been able to manage this program not only efficiently with our partnership through the Restaurant, Hotel, and Motel Association, but we continue to handle compliance and remittance with this strategic partner as we then expanded our MAT into not only just our traditional accommodations sector in April of 2024, but we also brought about reform within our short-term accommodations sector as well in July 1st of 2024 when that sector also started remitting MAT as well. Looking ahead, we actually anticipate a steady year-over-year growth with our accommodations providers coming on board and our tourism economy continuing to develop. I am happy to report with an aligned internal team, we've been able to actually bring about a 70% in-process compliance rate with our current SDA operators, thanks to the hard work of our planning, bylaw, and finance department and our short-term accommodation licensing programming as well. This is a glowing and positive accolade and KPI that I want to highlight for council is that exponentially outperforms our neighboring Niagara municipalities and their licensing framework. So big kudos to our internal team and the hard work within community and the initial results we're seeing. We're only about 2 weeks into enforcement and we're really, really pleased with those results. In summary, our MAT program is delivering on promise. It's generating a stable visitor-funded revenue stream that strengthens not only our Benchlands tourism brand, but builds our local economic impact and helps reduce the levy impact on residents. It was a blended and balanced approach that we were insistent on taking, and thanks to town council, who also ensured that we made sure that our lens of our residents was also included in this narrative. We were sure to make sure that it was a balanced approach throughout. With this in mind, I turn it over to you, Madam Chair, and our fellow committee members. If there are any specific questions on this evening's information update, I'd be happy to share those with you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Basilewski. I just want to say, I know this was a long process. Staff spent a lot of time going back and forth with our stakeholders, so I'm really, really chuffed to hear what success we're seeing, so congratulations on that. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Timmers, you may begin, please.
Excuse me, thank you, Chair. You kind of just touched on my question a little bit. It was quite a process, and I'm just wondering how the operators and people that are remitting, like, how is that going? It seems like, it's extremely successful. Your projections were bang on. When I looked at it today, I was like, wow, that's amazing. Because I know when we sat here in 2023 and you talked about the projections, and it's absolutely doing exactly what we were told it would do. So how are you finding the operators and people participating in the process? You know, they're remitting it. How's that working out?
Through you, Madam Chair. What I'm happy to report, Councillor Timmers, is the approach that the town has taken with everything I think we've enacted within a tourism development initiative is all about validation and consultation. There's nothing that we don't do that we don't bring before our stakeholders first to provide input before building the framework. Once we build that framework and put it in place, then we come back to that same group for further validation on what we've been able to find, the research and the data that we have to bring to the initiative, and also once again welcome their feedback. I know at times the municipality can get a little bit of flack about the timeliness in which we achieve these initiatives, but I really truly believe it was the time and initiative that the town took to do the education process, to host webinars, you know, to actually sit down with our local operators and walk them through step by step how to implement MAT. In fact, I have to give it to all of my fellow colleagues. We've kind of gone over and above, I think, as it relates to customer service. We have developed tools for local operators, how-to guides on how to add Airbnb, for instance, how to add MAT to that platform. Not a platform we manage, nor do we have jurisdictional regulatory, any policy or authority over, but we were able to utilize these partnerships to ensure that any implementation that we did with MAT, there was a resource or a tool or a body here at the town that could help our operators get through this process. I also think the education of how these funds were going to be used and the small wins we're already seeing as a result of destination marketing in our community is helping to bring that adaptation along now. We still have a way to go, but you know, the alignment, I think, with our short-term regulation framework is also helping to create a nice check and balance to make sure that all of our operators are being seen equitably. That's also, I think, a big strong point for us is when we adopted the MAT program, it wasn't just for traditional hotels. It was for our short-term accommodation sectors, our bed and breakfast operators, and our campgrounds. So now we've created a community of like-minded operators who can now all come together and we can actually solve the accommodations gap in Lincoln.
That's great. All I can say is well done.
Thank you.
You know, and lesson learned, like, in moving forward with other programs. You know, the way that it was approached was very well done and worked really well, obviously, so congratulations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Timmers. Councillor Patriva, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murray. And I just, too, like Councillor Timmers, I want to thank Mr. Deanne and Ms. Baslewski for this. I know that council pushed back at the start, but you know what? To your, what's the word? There's a word I'm looking for. It'll come to me. Intestinal fortitude. You did take our comments to heart, and you did sit down with those Airbnb owners and that were hesitant, that had issues. And we went through and we refined the asks and the due diligence and the permitting. And I think that's a direct result of what you see here for your compliance. And I mean, like, you're bang on your projections. There was a bunch of naysayers that sat around the table. Not only around our table, but around the community table. And you showed them that if you do it right, I'm going to use, my field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. So it's perfect. So with the ability to have this, let's take a day to the casino or maybe to the track, because, you've got some great insight. My only question, and I know you don't have a crystal ball. Councillor Mikulik wishes you did, but you don't. Our projections going forward, year 2, year 3, year 4, they were based on accommodators setting up in town. We've yet to see anything happen on Ontario Street, which was probably the first domino we wanted to fall. But do you anticipate, what do you anticipate going forward? And I'm not going to hold you to, but, just best case scenario. And maybe Mr. Bruder can chime in too, because if he's got some more insight on those properties, on when they're going to come on stream, that will level out this going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Petriva, through you, Chair. Our projections in the model that you have, based on the previous financial outcome of the report we brought before you, we were very conservative in that approach, knowing that the hotels that we currently had in that planning process when we did this forecast initially in 2023 they were coming down the pipeline in about 5 years. Now, one of the, I think, great strengths about our internal team is that we are literally constantly in communication. One hand washes the other. Every rung on the ladder helps us achieve bigger goals. So I'm in constant contact with Mr. Bruder's team. I have to thank Mr. Workington for his constant update with the ECDEV team on where these hotels are constantly at in process. We also need to, I think, highlight, Councillor Petrieva, when you look at these details, we were very conservative in occupancy rates. And in fact, even in 2014, we gave our STA sector grace for any accommodations that were already previously booked by July 1st. So technically, in this forecast, we missed the entire high season from our STA operators for the most part, and in fact, still overperformed in that sector. What we're seeing now, just based on information we actually got from the province today, we're trending quite well with domestic travel in 2025, and I have no doubt that that's going to continue. As we see these rates coming up and new hotels come online, right up until 2028, this is in the absence of having those large hotels in place, so we've been very conservative up until that point. At that 5-year mark is when we knew that additional planning applications, we'd actually see, to Councillor Miklick's point previously, shovels in the ground and more heads and beds. So we'll continue to adjust this forecast. We do have a commitment to come back before you and council with another update midway through the collection season. Now that we've got a full operational calendar year under our belts, we'll be able to have a better and more comprehensive idea of where this sector's headed. We are also in the process right now of doing an economic impact study jointly with the City of St. Catharines. That's also going to give us more data insights into our traditional hotel accommodations as well. These were based on industry trends provided by the province, whereas we're looking to get specific local data from operators in market that we can act on quite quickly moving forward and also help us forecast these numbers better. But Mr. Deanny, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, through you, and thank you, Ms. Bazlowski, for answering that. And Councillor, she's correct in that our forecasts were really for the year 2029 when we conservatively estimated additional hotels would be coming online. Those are the traditional hotels. And, you know, in speaking with our colleagues in planning, as members of council know, you know, Vintage Hotels, we think that one would be online by that point. We do think the one on Ontario Street would be online at that point. And potentially the one at the end of Victoria Avenue. But again, some of these are there's still a lot of variability in terms of identifying these. But again, we pushed it really back towards the year 6 mark.
Okay. And through you, Chair Murray, yeah, I mean, like this is fantastic. I wish I had access to $100,000 a few years ago. So having said that, and I don't want to steal your thunder maybe for a follow-up report to come, but, you know, with the whole encouraging of Canadians to stay local, any plans for a KA marketing plan along with the City of St. Catharines to encourage those to come to Niagara, to come to Lincoln, to stay longer, to visit what we have for the summer season?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Petrieva. We have very much taken a look at how powerful the American dollar is in our economy. We also understand that those visitor receipts account for millions of GDP within our, not only our own community, but in the Niagara region overall. We're very sensitive to the anti-American sentiment, as you can only imagine, when we're talking about an open hearts and open doors message. We've seen a small amount of American, I think, sentiment with regards to fear for traveling over the border, but I can tell you there is a regional effort that's currently happening, not only with Niagara Region ECDEV, what we're doing with our Lincoln Response and Tariff team, but us as a tourism region are very much aligned in that exact same messaging. We have invested as the DMO already in about $25,000 of border state marketing. We have no interest in turning that always-on messaging off to those states. They are one of the biggest providers of our shoulder season economy, and we want to ensure that despite what we like to refer to as mom and dad are fighting about, that our community still stays inclusive and will always be top of mind when folks are looking for a world-class destination.
Terrific. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Petrieva. Councillor Russell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I think to everyone's point, I'll reiterate it. Again, this is fantastic. Great report, great results. Again, so encouraging to see. Through you, Madam Chair, to Brittany, I'm not sure if you can answer this or not. I'm sure you probably can because I know you're near genius level. What percentage of either Airbnbs or, again, the B&Bs that were resistant to this change decided to either pack up and no longer operate compared to those that are, again, back when this was proposed, we had a map with all kinds of dots on it. How many of those dots are left compared to when this was proposed?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Russell. I'm happy to report right now, as we can see it in the rolling last 12 months, we've not had any attrition in our STA or STR sector. Now, listing viability obviously is seasonal, so our listings will change, but our overall inventory YTD, so year to date, in the last 12 months rolling, hasn't seen any attrition whatsoever. Now, through our licensing process, there may be some attrition. We're not anticipating a large volume. In fact, through the process right now of what we've seen come in through a compliance, there's only been less than a handful of applications that have had some red flags by way of compliance, but I can assure you that, as always, our team is working hand in hand with these operators. As you know, we don't have a no policy here at the town, where we have a policy of making sure that we help you to be compliant, to continue to do business in our community. I think business retention and expansion in Lincoln is just as important as investment attraction, and being able to help support these operators and continue to support them, I think, is the reason why we've had such a healthy SDA and SDR sector, and we have no interest in losing those accommodations providers as well. So we're doing everything we can within our regulatory framework and our authority to be able to keep those operators as a viable business in Lincoln.
That's great. And again, just to follow up, again, really appreciate that. And it's good to hear because, and I know, again, this goes to, I think, Councillor Timber's point about, again, how much staff worked with all of the stakeholders that were involved and going back and forth, coming to a program that would work for everybody. So again, it's very encouraging to see that the numbers seem to be pretty much bang on what we had prior to what was being proposed. Do we know how many, or if there are any, that have ignored and just decided not to license or not to follow through any of the requirements and they're just kind of like off the radar, or is that non-existent?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Russell. We just started enforcing our short-term accommodation bylaw. We have a few checks and balances in place to help make sure that all of these operators are being captured. So right now, between what we have in process and our STA agreements, as well as what we're seeing as registered online with ORMA, there's about a delta right now of currently about 20 operators. We know that the delta is even greater, and our team now with this check and balance system is we have a few more tools at our disposal to help bring these partners to life. I give Mike's, Mr. Barkway's team tons of credit. The enforcement side of the STA licensing and MAT is not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. We have several tools in place to be able to identify where these operators may be operating without an appropriate license, but we're also still learning. So we're, like I said, 3 weeks deep into enforcement. Our MAT, again, we're about only a full year, not full year yet for our STA team, so we still have a few more things to identify. But as it stands right now, we're doing a really good job in making sure that operators get continuously being educated. And this isn't a one and done kind of initiative. We will continue to keep doing webinars, workshops, offering these drop-in sessions as well for these operators to ensure that we have provided them with the tools that they need to be successful. And if we've missed something, it still allows us to continuously grow and learn through this process as well.
That's great. Again, I look forward to hopefully many, many updates to come, because again, I think not only for us who gave the approval on this, but again, for the residents out there that always have concern about how tax dollars are spent, this is something that obviously is, again, self-funding. And again, it's a huge win for everybody. So again, I hope that this message continues to get out and it's louder and larger every time we hear it. So thank you very much.
Mr. Deanne would like to respond as well. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just through you to the council, but also committee as well. Ms. Bazlowski has talked a little bit about our STA licensing. I don't want to confuse tonight's report with that. We are going to come back with a much more fulsome update. As Ms. Bazlowski just indicated, we're about 3 weeks into when enforcement began for STA licensing. But all good questions, because we do recognize that MAT, municipal accommodation tax, obviously ties in the short-term licensing regulation or regulatory framework that council institutes. So good questions, but we are going to come back with some more fulsome update.
Thank you very much, Director Deanne. Councillor Miklick, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair, to Brittany. Thank you for this report. Thank you for your presentation. This MAT tax, Councillor Patrieva alluded to earlier that there is some, challenges at the table, but I think ultimately with those sorts of discussions, we come out with the great outcomes that we do come out with. So And I do thank your team for the work that they've done. I think it requires buy-in from the people that are collecting this MAT tax and remitting it. There's always ways to not remit it or find, ways to cheat the system, but I think it requires buy-in. People have to see the results for themselves of, kicking into the pot. So can you give me some example? You mentioned they made 25,000 or so for Lincoln, made 90,000 for the DMO. What can these people that are collecting, remitting, what are they seeing? What sort of things can you say to these people to say, look at what we're doing, these are the results of, the money that you're collecting for us?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Mecklick. I'm happy to share, Councillor, that we've been able to, especially with our short-term accommodation sector, it's a net benefit back to them. Right now, that sector overall does not have an aggregator. So their only opportunity for marketing is if a consumer finds them haphazardly on a platform like Airbnb or another Ontario travel agent. The powerhouse of funding a destination marketing organization is we now become the great aggregator for all these different sectors and actually now have an opportunity to position Lincoln's short-term accommodations sector as a viable accommodations opportunity. So as a result of the MAP program, what we're doing now, along with our short-term licensing framework, is any operator who is licensed in Lincoln will receive a whole host of net benefits based on not only town support, but also DMO support. So that includes a complimentary listing on the DMO's website. That also entails their opportunity to be included in any of the consumer-facing campaigns that we now offer through the DMO, thanks to the support of the MAP program. They're also receiving a complimentary listing on the Niagara Benchlands website, as well as offerings in our lure guide. In addition to that, we do annual seasonal marketing, such as content marketing campaigns, where we're building assets like photography and videography, which we're offering to our community partners at zero cost. That investment then not only helps us support destination marketing, but we're able to turn those resources over to our local partners who would not otherwise actually have the capital or the resources to be able to invest in those places and spaces themselves. It also allows us to amplify a larger, broader voice that our local operators wouldn't have the investment capital to do. So those activities are things like content articles in the Globe and Mail, us attending trade shows on behalf of our sector, going to consumer trade shows and sharing the message of what our destination has to offer, activating at festival events to drive consumer acquisition. The list goes on. But to Paul's point, or Ms. Gianni's point, we will be bringing a fulsome update on what the DMO is going to be providing by way of that fee-for-service back to the town for MAT and what the expected outcomes are. Those metrics, like I talked about with the economic impact study, will allow us to not only measure return on engagement, which is really the only tool we have right now in tourism, but we'll also be able to manage and also measure return on investment as it relates to investment dollars, as well as visitation spending and visitor expenditures in our local community as well.
Perfect. I think that's important, that people understand the benefits to buying into this program, because let's face it, I don't think there's a hotel that we can book anywhere. I look for hotels all the time. There's always a MAT tax or some accommodation tax of some sort. It's just making sure that money is spent appropriately and properly, that benefits both the residents that have to, let's say, put up with tourism, and then there's those as well that are trying to promote tourism. And that money isn't just going to, let's say, Councillor Russell's question earlier about bureaucracy. Like, I don't know if, we want to see more things happening, more events happening than just going up in smoke and bureaucracy. So that's what I just want to make sure of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mikulik. So, seeing no further discussions, thank you very much, Ms. Basilewski, for being here with us tonight. I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer that committee receive and file for information report EDC-07-25 regarding the 2024 Municipal Accommodation Tax Program Performance Update, and that committee recommends staff continue to monitor program performance and provide the next update to committee during the 2025 mid-year reporting cycle. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open that vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I will close that, and that carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Devan. We will now consider item 7.2.5, Report PD-07-25 regarding non-parking AMPS bylaw amendment. The Manager of Municipal Law Enforcement will provide introductory comments. Mr. Barkway, please go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. From this report, it's anticipated that it will provide a more streamlined approach to the Clean Yards investigations, whereby investigations lead to enforcement after an order is issued to the property owner and there's non-compliance that's been confirmed. The officers can then issue an AMPS penalty notice instead of enacting the process of a provincial offense action. The time required to process a charge through the provincial offences court is slow and cumbersome for the bylaw officers that are involved and the people involved. Bylaw offenses are understandably deemed a lower priority in the provincial offences court than other offenses such as careless driving, motor vehicle accidents, consuming alcohol in a public place, etc. This ultimately creates a lengthy delay in court proceedings for the bylaw offenses, some in excess of 6 to 9 months plus, after the laying of a charge, before the case is even heard. Utilizing non-parking AMPS provides an in-house approach, which for appellants is seen as a less formal approach and one that continually is appreciated if we look at the parking offenses AMPS process that's in place already, rather than attending a formal court setting with the Justice of the Peace rendering a decision. In addition, staff will continue to review additional bylaws to identify their appropriateness for designation within the non-parking AMPS bylaw moving forward. These would be bylaw offenses whereby the allegation can be attributed to a property owner who can be identified by way of local data searches. As under the Municipal Act, municipal law enforcement has limited abilities to identify individuals, but we can tie them into the properties that are involved. Any associated AMPS fines are then able to be applied to the property tax roll to the associated property. Allegations or offenses that are purely attributed to a person would continue to be dealt with by Provincial Offences Act. And then moving forward, such bylaws as noise control, open air burns, possibly even property standards, some offenses under public nuisance or animal control are ones that are going to be looked at and reviewed by staff moving forward. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barkway. Are there any questions from committee on this report? Seeing none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Miklick that committee receive and file for information Report PD-07-25 regarding amendments to the non-parking administrative monetary penalty system bylaw 2023-25 and Clean Yards bylaw 2018-92, and that committee recommend council approve the amendments to the non-parking administrative monetary penalty system bylaw 2023-25 attached as Appendix C, and the Clean Yards bylaw 2018-92 attached as Appendix D, and that committee directs staff to update the fees and charges bylaw to reflect the fees and charges outlined in this report. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open that vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I will close that vote, and that carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Devan. We now move to number 8 on our agenda, which is confidential items. Before I read the motion and we move into closed, I would like to explain what will happen for those watching this meeting online. First, there will be a closed session statement that the Deputy Clerk will go through for staff that will be attending the closed session remotely. Once that is completed, we will move on with the motion to move into closed. The Deputy Clerk will be turning off the live webcast during the closed portion of the meeting. Once we have completed the closed portion of the meeting, we will resume with the live webcast and carry on with the public portion of the meeting, and will read the motions in public session. I will now ask the Deputy Clerk to conduct the closed session statement for those attending the closed session remotely.
Thank you, Chair. Members are reminded that discussions in closed session are to remain confidential as per our procedural bylaw and our code of conduct for the Council of the Town of Lincoln. Before we begin, I need each member that is attending electronically to confirm the following. 1, that you understand the matters are to remain confidential. 2, confirm no one else is present with you. 3, confirm no one else can hear this closed session. 4, confirm that you are not using any electronic devices other than your tablet, computer, telephone for the video conferencing. And lastly, confirm that you are not recording this portion of the meeting. If you acknowledge all of the above, please reply with "I understand and confirm" to all of the statements as I read your name aloud. First up, Town Solicitor Tom Alinsky.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Thank you. And Town Solicitor David Retner.
I understand and confirm all of the statements.
Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva. Under Section 239 of the Municipal Act, notice is hereby given that committee adjourn to closed session in order to address item 8 as follows. Pursuant to Section 239-2E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, and Section 239-2F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose pertaining to ongoing bylaw matters. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I will close that, and that carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our Deputy Clerk will now proceed with the technical requirements to move into closed session. Thank you very much. I have a motion moved by Councillor Ranjima that committee resume in open session. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open that vote.
Thank you. That vote is now open. Thank you, and I will close that, and that carries.
Thank you very much. I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers that committee receive and file the confidential update as it relates to item 8 pursuant to section 2392E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, and section 2392F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose pertaining to ongoing bylaw matters. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open that vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open. And I will close that, and that carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reimer, you declared an interest before we went into close. Would you like to reiterate that at this time?
Thank you, Chair Murray. The company that was referred to in closed session is a customer of the company I work for. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now on item 9 of our agenda, which is committee remarks. Do we have any committee remarks? Councillor Russell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff. Again, obviously, we all know that we had quite a storm last week, and I know Councillor Ranjima and I were receiving quite a lot of calls and emails and reach outs from residents in Ward 1 about a lot of the flooding and a lot of the water. And again, I want to thank staff for everything they've done, not only the night of, to get some of those that required immediate assistance through it, but in the days that followed to help remediate some of the issues in some of the creeks. And again, a lot of the continuation of follow-up with residents. But with that being said, there are a few concerns out there in some particular areas that got hit pretty hard near the creeks and again I guess they would be in the lowlands of Beamsville. And I'm just wondering if staff can give a comment on, again, what we can expect as far as follow-up with some of those residents, either that have reached out so far and maybe those that haven't reached out yet, but just, again, they've reached out to their ward councilors with concerns about either making claims or just ensuring that there's preventative measures in place somewhere down the road so that anything that may have happened maybe doesn't happen down the road.
Thank you very much, Councillor Russell. Mr. CAO, would you like me to ask? So, Director Graham, could you please comment on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. Yeah, I'd like to make a few comments about the storm that did occur, and then I'll give some updates, and I know our CAO would also like to make a few comments. So we did have a very significant rainfall event last Wednesday, April 2nd. Started around late afternoon, went into the evening, which resulted in a lot of flooding conditions right across the town. Just for information purposes, the town received about 60 millimeters of rain, which is a significant amount in a short period of time. And I'd also like to kind of note too, what made a lot of the flooding and runoff conditions a lot worse was the precedent conditions kind of before the rainstorm. So this time of year, we have a lot of saturated soils, which also reduce the soil absorption rates, causes the runoff to happen quickly, faster, higher volumes. And, right before the storm, we had snow that was coming down, heavy wet snow that was on the ground. So, so a lot of these preconditions really made the flooding worse. And then when you put on, this massive heavy rainfall that we got, I'd say, hearing from different residents and just staff in general, we did experience a lot of flooding conditions in certain areas and locations across the town that we haven't really seen to this degree before. Again, the severity of this storm event. A few updates in terms of what we're doing. So since the storm event, staff are continuing to respond, prioritize various repairs. We've had a lot of erosion, washout damages along the road, shoulder areas, culverts, ditches, etc.
So this work will remain a priority for staff and be ongoing for the coming weeks ahead. We're also communicating and responding to residents who've called in expressing concerns, trying to learn more about what they experienced during the flood. So that is something that we're actively doing as well. And then we also will be investigating the various flooding situations that were experienced to gain a better understanding of what may have happened. Also look at any potential future prevention strategies to help once we have a better understanding of what happened in some of these areas. And we're also working very closely in collaboration with Niagara Region Public Works teams to also discuss and review various flooding concerns related to a lot of the regional roads and infrastructure as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know Mike, our CAO, would like to make a couple comments as well, so I'll turn it over to our CAO.
Mike, can you please go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, to the councilor and to all members of council and I think the public or anybody else that's watching. Maybe just a little bit of an update in terms of where we're at during the storm, leading up to the storm. I think as Dave highlighted, we did pull together our Emergency Operations Center once the flooding occurred. As Dave said, in a very short period of time, a lot of rain. I can tell you in talking to colleagues from Mississauga to Hamilton to other parts throughout Niagara region, they also experienced similar flooding in a lot of areas where flooding had never occurred before. I think of some of the properties in the Green Lane and Carriage area there that have never really had flooding like this before. So I think it speaks to the severity of the event. We are and try where we can to address areas that are high priority and that we deem high priority in terms of the grates that need to be cleaned out, some of the ditching that needs to be addressed. Our ditching program is ongoing. It isn't one that we can get to every ditch all the time. Part of that is just cost, part of that is resourcing. And so we look at high priority areas. There are things private property owners can do in terms of certain sites and certain locations on their own properties. And there are things that we're doing in terms of addressing, again, more of these high priority areas. While, I think people want to point to this grate or that grate, and maybe this needed to be cleaned out, and that could have avoided a flood. With the amount of rain that we received in that short period of time, as Director Graham highlighted, a lot of it's just based on volume. I know the region was doing bypassing at a number of pumping stations, which again speaks to just the amount of and volume of rain and water and precipitation that we received in a short period of time. So we are, as Dave said, investigating a lot of the cases. I know tomorrow I'm going out to look at one particular case in the Jordan area. Just got another email as we were sitting here listening to Dave's explanation about some other flooding that's occurring in between two properties and some issues with catch basins, culverts, and some of the ditching that needs to happen. So we are trying to address each of the calls we get on a case-by-case basis. We are working with people, encouraging them to go through their own insurance companies. It is not a pleasant time for a lot of people who've had basements that have been flooded right now. The inconvenience, the cost or the hassle, even if insurance covers it. And so, I think collectively we're all trying to do our best here. But again, encouraging residents on your own properties, ensure gutters are cleaned regularly, look at some of the grading. Call us if you have concerns and issues. We are trying to get out, as I said, to each of these properties. I know Director Graham and I will probably be going out tomorrow, as I said, to deal with the one in Jordan. Director Bruder was out on site during the storm as well, looking at a couple of properties in the Jordan area. And similarly, we'll be looking at properties across the town that have been flooded. So I offer those comments through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor and to all members of council and residents that have had issues. No good answer, nothing to really tell people that they're going to feel better about this and it may not happen. But we have been blitzing locations right now, and we're going to continue with our yearly programs around ditching and other things as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Russell?
Yeah, and again, I just really want to thank both Dave and Mike for the commentary and their work on this, and their staff. I know Dave Warden was also out the next day in creeks cleaning them up, and he spent a lot of time in Bartlett Creek just trying to clean up some of the areas that were causing some of the flows with just stuff that got caught up in the trees. So there's definitely some work to be done when things dry out a little bit. I do know that there are a few families out there that are a little bit overwhelmed with what's happened. Again, there are a few that reached out today that still can't turn on their furnace because the gas company shut it down because of some of the backup that came up from the ground. So again, I think just over the next few days, we may be passing people over to staff with gentle hands to see if they can get some direction on some next steps. So, but again, thanks to everybody who's chipped in, and hopefully this storm is something we won't see anytime soon. Again.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Renchema, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Russell. I have a question about, so I had a resident reach out to me particularly about Conkle Creek, and asking that the newly designed Conkle Creek be cleaned out because they feel that that growth within the creek is causing a problem. And I spoke with him and I said that I recall that creek being redesigned specifically for the reason that in its older form, it was straight and it ran straight and water ran straight, and that's a problem because in order to control erosion and control the damage that happens from the flow of water, you want it to meander so the water slows down and that there's less of a problem in the long run. And that was the whole point of the design of that creek, or a big part of the point of redesigning that creek. And also, my understanding is that in that design, you want there to be growth, so it supports the banks. And so you have to be careful when you go in and you cut out growth, because you may be subjecting the banks to further erosion, and you may be allowing the water to speed up, which is exactly the opposite of what you want. So can we get a comment, if you can, through you, Madam Chair, about how Conkle Creek, the newly redesigned Conkle Creek, performed during this significant event? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Director Graham, are you comfortable with that? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Councillor, for the question. Yeah, a lot of your comments were right on the mark in terms of, the Conkle Creek was designed to have a naturalized cross-section, so we do want to have plantings in there to help with erosion, slowing water down to a degree so it's not erosive and causing a lot of damage, but at the same time conveying water. A lot of the area of Conkle Creek, when you go for a walk, the wider section was designed to have a floodplain area, so it would have a lot more storage for water compared to its older design. So, that worked out very well. My understanding, Conkle Creek, from the pictures I saw and the feedback I got, worked well. It had major flows in it, though, I think, and that's maybe looks concerning, obviously, and with that much flow happening and high levels, but it did work well. I wasn't made aware of any flooding results for the new section of Conkle Creek from the storm, so I guess those would be my comments.
Okay, so I guess I was looking for confirmation that the regrowth that you see within the creek it's there for a reason, that we want to keep it to a certain extent. If there's something that's blocking a particular drainage area, we want to clean that out, but we want regrowth to happen in the creek. We can't just cut it out, right? Is that right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that's correct. So we definitely want to look at where there's actual blockages and remove those or respond to those. But as far as the natural vegetation, that is something we do want to maintain. It is a regulated waterway as well from the Conservation Authority as a naturalized waterway, so we do have to maintain the vegetation. But as far as any blockages, we definitely will look into those and get those either removed or addressed.
Okay, thank you. That was going to be my next question, because I know that staff have been down to Bartlett Creek, Madam Chair, and so I'm wondering if staff have had time in all this chaos to review potential blockages within the new Conkle Creek. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Renchema. There being no further comments, we move to item number 10, which is adjournment. There being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned at 8:42 PM. Thank you.